Hello and welcome to Jill Cameron Creations. Thanks so much for joining me today. We're going to be making a gift card set for the guys today. We're going to be using oranges and blues. Check it out. So this is my final for the Altenew Educator Certification Program Level 1. And I'm going to be making kind of a grungy set of cards. We're going to be using a couple different products. The first thing I'm going to do for this first card is I'm going to stamp a background, and I am using dark gray ink. I'll have the colors listed below. And when I stamp a background using a platform such as this, I do it a little bit backwards. I put my paper on top of the stamp and close the base. That way my paper doesn't shift and I don't really have to like stick it down to anything. And I know that my paper is, and my image is going to have a really good result. And then I just pick it up off of there. And I don't have to worry about restamping it or anything because I'm going to have a really good impression if I do it that way. I'm sorry the bottom of the panel is a little bit off, but I wanted you to see the colors and how I was doing this. I'm using the range of oranges here. And I'm going to use the fill-in stamps from this background stamp set and just randomly complete the background a little bit here and there. It's not going to be complete at 100%, but it's going to be mostly complete. I'm going to do both orange and blue in the background. I'm not worrying about if the stamp is perfect because remember I said I'm going to do these cards a little bit on the grungy side. Then once I fill in with the oranges and the blues and fill in the places that I want to with this, then I'm also going to take and do some heat embossing on the background, and I will be using Distress Glaze on the background because it is transparent instead of opaque, and it delivers that shine that I want that has that clear quality to it. So our panel is all finished, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this down so that we get a bright pop of white border around the panel itself once it's popped on the front of our card base. I trimmed 1/4 of an inch off of one end and then 1/8 of an inch off of each side of our card base here. Now I'm going to ink blend over the entire face of the card, and I'm doing this with super light gray ink and a bristle ink blending tool. And this just is going to soften the colors out and give it more of that dirty look that I'm going for, that grungy look. And then I'm going to take a domed ink blending tool and a little bit darker gray ink and go around the edges of it, and then take that same bristle brush and just even out the ink blending around the edges and soften it out just a shade. And that actually makes this card pop so much, and I fell in love with it. Just absolutely fell in love with it. This is one of those cards that is, if you just kind of glance at it, it doesn't look all that impressive until you see all the little details that go into it. That is just absolutely gorgeous. For our sentiments on these cards, I am also sticking with the simple sentiments. We're going to use the same exact sentiment set, and these are encouragement cards for the guys. First sentiment is going to be on black cardstock with silver embossing powder. I'm going to do this one centered, and it's going to be a banner across the bottom 2/3 of the card. Well, actually in the bottom 1/3 of the card there. And I'm just going to cut that into a sentiment strip, and it's going to go across the entirety of the card and not just this panel. So it's going to be cut to the same width of the card front to kind of bring all of that together. For this next card, I started out by doing double-sided adhesive sheets on the back of 2 cardstock panels. Now I'm going to be real honest. This card did not go exactly as I planned it to go, but I stuck it out to the end, and I still really liked the card, so I kept it in here. Sometimes we plan cards in our head and they just don't work out as we planned, but I have always thought that no matter what, cards are still gorgeous and beautiful, even if they're not 100% to how we planned them out. So the first thing that I did for these cardstock panels is one of them I ink blended down from corners, and I did it in orange, and the other one I'm going to do in blue. And then I'm going to take the Halftone Circles die panel, and I'm going to die cut those both out using that die. Now, because this die plate is such a specific size and my paper is that specific size, I do use a little bit of washi tape just to hold it in place so it didn't shift. And I'm running that through my die cutting machine, and because I have the double-sided adhesive on the back of the panel, it's not going to cut all the way through and like release all of the little dots everywhere. And that's what I was looking for. What I was hoping is that I was going to be able to peel up the outer edge, the outline on both of these, and swap them out. But my blue dots did not cooperate with me. And that's okay. The card still turned out absolutely gorgeous. If I did this in the future, I would just do a plain blue background and just die cut the orange panel and peel that off and use the outline of the orange on top and just have the blue showing through the background. That's what I would do next time. But I did peel up all of the little dots. I pulled very gently on this, got it started, and then I just used my little pokey tool and started to pull up both the corners on both of these, and just very gently went back and forth and very gently pulled up the orange on here. And I'm just put my pokey tool on the dots and pressed them back down to the backing on the sticky part, and just went through. This did take a little bit of time. This was a time-consuming card, I will be very honest with you. But I still like how it turned out. So once I got the cover of it, got the orange cover up, and I pulled off the blue cover as well, then I put the orange over top of the blue and on the dots. And I didn't really worry about at first if all of the blue dots were still in there, and then I pressed everything down really good and took my bone folder and kind of pressed everything down really well, and was hoping that I was going to be able to put all of the dots back in there and push everything back in, and that didn't work out. When I pulled everything up, the blue dots didn't stick with my orange panel. That's okay. Sometimes, like I said before, we have the plan in our head of how things go, and it just doesn't work out, and I'm okay with that. But I did try to put everything back in, and I wasn't going to take the time to put all the little blue dots back in there. So if I did this card in the future, I would actually ink blend the blue panel and just put the orange over top of it and ink blend instead of doing a die cut inlay on this. This was a little ambitious. I still like how the card turned out though. And I did put the blue on a white background, and I can use that later for a different card. Now, I could have just left this background on here and glued this directly down and left it as it was, but I really wanted to just stick this straight down. I really did. That was what was in my brain. But that's okay. I just went with it anyway. It gave it more of that grungy look, gave it more of that incomplete look to me. And now we're going to do our sentiment, and instead of a strip, we're actually going to do a circle this time. And I decided after I stamped this and I was getting ready to heat emboss it, and I was like, nope, I'm going to do this in a circle. I don't really like that. So I stopped. Actually, I think I heat embossed this. Nope, I wiped it off. and then decided I was going to do this in a circle and redid it. Sometimes we change our minds. And now we're just going to heat emboss this in silver, and I'm also going to add another circle behind this, and I'm going to ink blend that around the edge of it with a little bit of gray ink to bring that gray into this card as well. And we have the shine of the silver. I'm just going to die cut this and pop that on the front of the card. This next card, we're going to ink blend the entire panel all the way down with one color. However, it's not going to be a consistent color all the way down. I'm going to make sure that it's kind of splotchy here and there. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to keep that kind of grungy look to it. Then I'm going to take all of that ink that's left on my media mat there, and I'm going to spritz it with water, and I'm going to pick it up with the panel itself so that my panel is a little bit more splotchy. And then I'm going to actually do the same thing that we did in the cards for the gals. And I am going to impress a stencil into my panel, and then I'm going to ink blend over that just a shade to get a little bit of depth out of it. It is, this is my favorite card out of this bunch. This is my favorite card. So we're going to ink blend this panel real quick, and then I'm going to do the ink smushing just a shade and get the ink picked up on it. I am going to dry it with my heat tool just to make sure that it's dry a little bit, make sure I have some darker areas and some lighter areas on my panel here, and then we'll run the stencil through this, and then I'm going to darken up some of the areas on here. And remember that your ink is going to dry a little bit different color. It does lighten typically just a little bit, and I was like, I have a little bit of ink left on here, and I'm going to flatten this out on here. Do a little bit more, just a little bit more, and I just picked it up. I just sat the panel down in it literally, and I'm just going to wipe it up, get the rest of that up there, and you'll see it at the end. And that was just clear water just to give it a little bit more texture in some places. Now I'm going to dry that with my heat tool, and after it's dry you can really see it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Just to get that a little bit of difference in that background. And I flipped my panel over so that I could flatten my paper back out, just to make sure that it's all nice and flat, even though running it through my die cutting machine will do that. But now we're going to use this stencil. I'm going to tape it to the back here, and then we're going to run it through and get that impression from the stencil, using it very similar to a die. Instead, we're using an embossing mat with it, and we get that impression on there. Is that you really couldn't see the impression all that well, so I layered the stencil back over it, and I took some of the really dark blue ink and I just went over it in a few places very, very lightly. I mean, with a super, super light hand, and I'm talking uber, uber light. And I even have a piece of scrap paper over there, and look how much that stood out and just changed that background significantly, just adding that little touch of darker ink on top of that. Now I'm going to, that's the dark gray that's left on a blending tool, and I just went over top of it in some areas to add some definition towards the center of it. That's the dark gray that's left on a blending tool. So now I'm going to use, this is a Study in Watercolor Stamp Set, and I'm going to use the largest floral element out of that, and I'm going to stamp this in the oranges. And I have some, I'm just all the different colors. I'm using several of the different colors and just adding ink to the stamp in different places, and I'm going to stamp it twice. I stamped it once in all over, and then I'm going to add some of the other colors in some other places, and just to give it a little bit of texture and a little bit of color in some other places, and stamp it down. And then I'm going to actually stamp that twice, and then I'm going to die cut that, and we are going to pop that up on the front of our card panel. And to add some shine to this card, I didn't have any silver mirror cardstock on hand, so I made my own. I'm actually going to rub embossing ink on the bottom corner here, and I'm going to sprinkle some silver embossing powder in that bottom corner and heat it up, melt it. I'm going to do 2 layers of it, and then I have some silver mirror cardstock. Ta-da! Made my own just right there. And then we're going to layer all that together on that card panel. For our last card, we are going to be using geometric shapes here, and I'm going to take 3 triangles of different sizes, and I'm going to stamp them out with a black outline, and then I am going to ink blend over top of those. And I'm ink blending the blue and the orange colors. I'm making sure that that ink is really dry because I didn't want the dark charcoal gray to smear with these colors as I'm ink blending on here. And I'm ink blending outside of the line. I'm not worried about that because we're going to fussy cut these triangles out. Don't forget that when you fussy cut something, when you take your scissors and actually cut up against that black line, you are going to have that white cardstock showing on that outer edge. And take a black marker and go over that outer edge from the back side of the cardstock, and it will take care of it and make it look more finished. So I'm just going to go over these with my blending tool. Now I'm going to fussy cut those out with my scissors real quick, and then we're going to create our background. For the background, I'm going to create a simple pattern, and I am freehanding this because I do better freehand. You can use a stamping tool. I set my panel down and I taped it down so it wouldn't move, and I am using the same triangle stamp, and I am stamping it in a similar pattern all the way up, and I'm just turning the stamp backwards and upside down, right side up, and stacking that up and creating this pattern. Once that is finished, then I'm going to take the striped triangle that's in this stamp set, and I will actually stamp over top of it and connect a couple of the triangles together, and I'm going to silver heat emboss that one. And then we're going to stack up our ink blended triangles and add our sentiment under them. And that's going to finish off this card. At the end, we'll take a look at how we package these cards together. The biggest challenge for me was how to package these as if I were giving these as a gift. I don't keep a whole lot of materials in the house that I could make a package out of. So I had to get very resourceful. I had backer boards from the backside of 12 by 12 paper packs, and I cut that down to 6 by 6, and then I went rummaging around in my gift wrap section, because I always keep the gift wrap twines and ribbons and stuff from my mother's packaging, because that woman goes overboard. And that's what that twine is from my from Christmas presents from my mom from the year before. And I saved it and just wrapped it around a spool that I have. I haven't bought ribbon and stuff in years because I just pull it off the packages that she gives me. And I thought I will actually make a flat pack for these cards. And I adhered 6 by 6 patterned paper that coordinates the colors of each of the cards, because some of this is from the gals cards and the other ones are from the guys cards. And I just made it all one video and tacked it onto the end of both of them so you could see it. And I made flat packs. And because I am somebody that likes to drop my gifts down into gift bags, but this is something that could actually be put into an envelope and shipped very easily without a lot of bulk. You could drop it into a gift bag. You could also just add a tag to it and stick it under a Christmas tree. It would be great to slip onto a teacher's desk, anything like that. So what I did was I included the envelopes behind the cards. They're not sticking out. And I wrapped this twine around it. This is some heavy duty twine. And I crossed it over on the front and the back, and I did it several times, so it created like this cage for the cards, and then it tied it really securely. I made sure that it was really, really tight, and that way it pretty much caged the cards in. I did not want it to be evenly spaced. I wanted it to be in different areas on the card front, so I created all these different little crisscrosses all over the place, and then I tied it in a knot. And that's where you could actually put a gift tag if you wanted to. I just tied it in a bow because it was very simple, and I really, really liked this. And then I just spread out the different areas to hold the cards in. And like I said, you could actually slip this down into a flat pack envelope so that you could ship it, and it would mail very easily. You could slip this in something else, or just hand it out. This could be a really sneaky way to give somebody a gift of cards and slip it into their bag. You can walk by and slip it in and be very, very sneaky about it, and they get home and it's a nice surprise for them as a gift. Just something really sweet, just something really nice, and a very nice way to package them where they're not going to be big and bulky. And to me, that's something that I like to do is minimal packaging. I'm a gift bag person, something that can be reused. I generally will put gift tags, tied gift tags and that kind of thing on my gift bags instead of putting stickers on them, so that the gift bags can be reused. And I don't use a lot of wrapping paper and that kind of thing anymore. I like minimal packaging on my stuff for this kind of thing. So I thought this was very different and something that could be used in many, many different ways. So I hope you enjoy this packaging. All the cards are at the end of the video. Take a look at those. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great day.